done, I'll say we'll let people in.
Is my background loud at all?
No, it's good. It's not loud enough.
Done. I'll say we'll let. Okay. We're alive. We can let people in now.
Do I let them in?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll moderate everything, Ashio, so you don't have to worry about it. Hi, everyone. Okay, we're just going to be starting at 8:05, so in about 3 minutes, just waiting for everybody to get on. Thank you so much for joining. We appreciate all of you. Hi, Sarah.
Sorry, I was mute, but hello.
Guys, we have viewers from Greece.
We are logging in at 3 a.m. because I said I missed Bright Future Dentist. And yeah, that's it.
I love the dedication.
Yeah.
Yes, this meeting is being recorded. However, if you wanted to receive the chemistry crash course giveaway, you will be receiving a link to fill out a form to get the code for it, and the code will be shared at the very end of the webinar. So you guys can find the recording of this on our YouTube channel.
So, where is everyone's favorite travel destination?
Let's do the icebreaker. Everybody comment and answer Sarah's question.
Where everyone's travel.
My next travel destination is Croatia.
Yeah. Egypt. Greece.
Greece.
And we've got a dentist to be here.
Hi. Hi, Nev.
And
England. Dubai. That reminds me of the joke.
Italy. Italia. Oh, Korea.
Korea is a good one. Iran for the food is also true.
Thailand. Shami, where is your favorite travel destination?
I already said it, but it's Croatia. Noor took it off of her bucket list already.
Travel destination.
After Greece, Sarah, what's yours? I'm running out of storage. Okay, let's ask another question. What is a food you will never try? For me, it's any insect. I will never try that.
Yeah. Human
babies.
Durian. I've heard durian is really good.
Oh, Kareem,
you just like tuna? That's a controversial opinion for tuna. Cream
Anchovies.
says
If you've had
octopus.
Caesar salad, you've had anchovies. Hot take.
I guess Kareem doesn't like calamari.
We just had an octopus risotto tonight, Kareem.
Oh my
And
god,
it
an
was
octopus
That's
risotto.
kind of sad. I don't know. Octopus are too smart to be eaten.
That's true. They're very smart. Tuna not.
Not to be eaten by.
Brussels sprouts. Interesting.
Brussels sprouts is really interesting, actually.
Danny, do you mind sharing why or what or how you feel about Brussels sprouts?
What is the hatred?
No, I just feel like it's just the whole texture and just the way it looks is just off-putting, I think.
Honestly, I feel that. But I don't know, I feel like if you can season them really well, it could actually be good. Personal experience, though.
Awesome.
No, I like the icebreakers. Sorry, keep it up. Ask one more question and then we'll start.
One last question. Any questions?
Why is it so difficult?
Very.
Favorite spice. And why?
Salt.
What did she say?
Favorite spice, but we're gonna skip that question and
No, let's skip that question. Okay, let's ask something related so we can jump back in. Has anybody taken their DAT before? Say yes or no in the chat. Wow. Okay, we're seeing a lot of no's actually. So you guys have come to the right place. So for those of you who haven't, but still for those of you who have, I'm going to share a couple links throughout the webinar, but we'll get started now. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Sarah, for the icebreakers. And thank you so much to DAT Tutor for joining us for this event today. So welcome to Bright Future Dentist 7 strategies to receive 100 percentile on the DAT. More specifically, the Canadian DAT will be discussed in this webinar. So you're going to learn about what's on the DAT in this webinar, how to ace each section, hear from 100 percentile tutors, and also receive exclusive deals from DAT Tutor. As well, I'm going to share with you guys a DAT resource guide, which we made here at Bright Future Dentist, and it's going to include all of that boring information that's on the Canadian DAT guide and kind of summarize for the most important parts so you don't have to worry about reading that whole document. So yeah. Today at this webinar, every student that has joined will receive one free chemistry crash course from DAT Tutor. And as well, you're going to be receiving a DAT Tutor weaknesses sheet where you can chart your weaknesses as you're studying throughout the summer or whenever you decide to be studying for the DAT. As well, we have some really great discount codes for you in case you wanted to purchase more crash courses or receive any tutoring from DAT Tutor. So you can use BFDCC for 20% off all crash courses and BFD for 10% off all tutoring packages. So like I said, this is the Bright Future Dentist webinar, so I'm going to share a little more about who we are and what we've done. So Bright Future Dentist is a student-run pre-dental organization dedicated to helping students on their pathway to dentistry. We usually have a lot of educational events similar to this one that you've joined us here at today. We also have many events that help you understand the educational components of getting into dental school. We also host workshops, have guest speakers, have community service events, networking events, and also much more. Just helping students being equipped with the knowledge and insight into the field of dentistry and creating a place for pre-dental students to form friendships and network with each other. So if you haven't already, I recommend you join our WhatsApp group chat to connect with other pre-dental students and also get involved with us. We have a lot of different events that we kind of like post here, so it's a good way to get reminded of things that are coming up. And as well, I also share different types of volunteer opportunities, usually in the Toronto area, but also virtual ones. As well, if you have any questions about just life as a pre-dental, you can always just drop it in there, ask something, and everybody is so supportive and they respond and answer your question. So it really helps you not feel confused along your journey. As well, lastly, make sure you're following us on Instagram for more event announcements and pre-dental resources, which are going to be coming out this summer. We're definitely going to be having a ton more webinars, which I believe will be useful for everybody, since especially you're coming on here to learn about how to take your DAT. You're also going to want to know about how to actually apply to dental schools, whether it's Canadian, American, or international. So we're going to be having a ton of events over the summer for you guys to learn all about that. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to us on Instagram, but I'm going to pass it over to Arshia right now, and he's going to be taking over this webinar along with Kareem. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, please make sure to drop them down into the comment box. I'm going to be sharing some links with you guys right about now, so you can check out the resources that I mentioned and also check out DAT Tutor's links. And also, if you have any questions that maybe you wanted to like verbally mention, you can also wait until the end for our Q&A period and also ask Arshia and Kareem any other questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Okay, hello everyone. So my name is Arshia. I studied psychology, neuroscience, and behavior at McMaster, and now I'm going to my second year of dentistry in U of D. I got a 27 in my academic average, which was 100 percentile at a time. My highest scores were 30 in chem and 29 in reading comprehension. I also found a DAT tutor.
My name is Kareem. I'm an instructor for biology and chemistry at DAT Tutor, which will be our course offerings over the summer. I did my undergrad in health sciences at Queen's, and I'm entering my first year into dental school. Just like Arshia, I got a 27 on the DAT, which was 100 percentile also in the re-year that I wrote it. And I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
Yeah, not to mention that Kareem's high scores were 30 in chem and 30 in bio, which is insane.
Yeah,
Okay,
I tried to be humble with that.
All right, so let's understand the DAT a little bit more before we discuss the strategies. So the Canadian DAT has 3 sections. The first section is a science section made up of biology and general chemistry. 70 questions, you have an hour to do them. Then you get 15-minute break. Then you have another hour where you do the perceptual ability test, what we call PAT. I would consider this, among many other pre-dentals, that this is the hardest PAT section. You have 90 minutes to do 60 questions. Sorry, you have 60 minutes to do 90 questions, which gives you less than a minute per each question. And you do 15-minute break. Then you have reading comprehension, where you read 3 passages constituting of 50 questions, and you also are given an hour to do it. The scoring system for DAT is from 1 to 30, but the lowest score is typically around 14 or 13, and the highest score is 30, as we've seen with Kareem here. So I'm going to go and also talk initially about American DAT. Now, this webinar is about the Canadian DAT, but the American DAT is very similar to the Canadian one, except we have 2 extra sections. We have organic chemistry sections, 30 extra questions, and we also have a quantitative reasoning section where it has a lot of probability, statistics, and mathematical problems. There's some Canadian schools, if you're thinking of applying to Canada, that do not accept the American DAT, including Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. So if you're thinking of applying to Canada, I highly recommend you take the Canadian DAT. It's relatively easier because it's less content. Okay, so I also want to discuss why DAT is important. So over the past couple of years, there's been an inflation in GPA, whether it's due to universities offering more bird courses or whether it's due to COVID. GPAs have been rising, so universities are trying to look for ways to differentiate applicants better. And that also has meant that DAT scores have been rising. And typically top universities in Canada look for competitive scores which start from 22 and above. Now, this doesn't mean if you get a section below 22 is a problem. I think they're much more holistic than that. But one thing I want to mention is it's better to get holistically above average score in all sections as opposed to do really well in one section and really bad the other. Good news for Canadian DAT is that multiple attempts are allowed. You can do up to 3 attempts per year, and after that, you can take 1 attempt per year. And you can do unlimited number of times as long as you live. Okay, so let's start with the strategies. So we have 7 strategies. The very first strategy is begin the PAT from the end, right? PAT is made up of 6 sections. We have keyholes, top front end, angle ranking, hole punch, cube counting, and pattern folding in that order. And the two hardest sections of the PAT are keyholes and top front end. So imagine you start your PAT practice test or your actual test, and you start with the hardest sections, right? That not only that kills your momentum and gives you a ton of anxiety because you're behind, you also lose a lot of time. And one thing about PAT is that it doesn't matter if you get, a good grade in hole punch or TFE, they consider all your grade equally. So it's better to get 100 and do excellent in hole punch, cube counting, and pattern folding than do mediocre in all of them. Also, so this means that when you're starting your test and practice test, you click on review, go all the way down to question 90 and click on previous. So you start from pattern folding and go all the way back. This method is much better than going from keyholes forward because you're not starting with the hardest sections. And I can assure you, I've had some students, regardless of the time they had, whether it was 30 minutes or 10 minutes, they got the same score in keyholes. So you might as well put most of your attention on the easier sections. So just to reiterate myself, start from the end. It helps you a lot more. Strategy number 2, document your weak areas. Right? As humans, we kind of have this bias that we want to focus on what our strengths are because it feels good to do well in areas we're good at. That's not something you want to do for PAT, for DAT. As I mentioned, it's much better to do above average in all sections than to do really excellent in one area and really bad in another area. So what do I mean by document weak areas? So we created this sheet for you guys that I will share with you. This is called the DAT Tutor Weaknesses Sheet. This is a biology section, so I'm going to explain this a little bit more. On test, we have C3, which means crusher test number 3. Here we have the question that you got wrong, and here's the topic. So in our case, our student got a question wrong in bacteria and viruses, and the reason they got it wrong is because they goofed, right? They knew the question, but they didn't think of it through. For another section, they put anaerobic fermentation, but they couldn't remember it. It's not just enough for you to find out what question you got wrong. It's important to realize why you got it wrong. If you so-called goofed, it's better to pay more attention to the question from now on. If you couldn't remember, it means you need to study that area more. So we made that data sheet for you. You will get it at the end of this webinar. Now, Karim is going to discuss biology and chemistry sections.
So my biggest tip for biology is to put any material that is new to you, you're unfamiliar with, towards midway or to the end of your studying. So what ends up happening for most people is that taxonomy is a pretty new kind of topic, unless you chose to study it in undergrad. And people decide to put it in the middle or end of their studying. Now, taxonomy, for those that aren't familiar, is the classification of like animals, fungi, plants, just every living organism. And it tends to be brand new for people and it's quite dense in material. Now, there's 2 benefits to putting it later in your studying. Number 1, for example, I came from a strong undergrad in physiology. So I put my physiology at the start of my studying. And not only did it help me focus on like areas where I'm not as strong in down the line, but it gives you the motivation to get in the mood of studying and the habit of doing it as well. For me, like taxonomy, ecology, these kind of more holistic topics on biology on the DAT were new to me. And so towards midway or to the end of my studying, the benefit of learning them is that they're fresh in your mind. And so by the time your exam date comes, you're more likely to remember that information, which you may have more trouble with. Strategy number 4 for chemistry is that I strongly recommend you make a list of questions for each unit in chemistry. So for instance, usually during your studying in chemistry, you'd start with like molecular structures, atoms, bonds, and then you move down to thermochemistry, you move down to solutions. But as you progress through unit by unit, try to make a list of the various kinds of styles and questions they might ask you for each unit. So on this next slide, I have an example of what that might look like. Let's take thermochemistry, for example. As you move through your studying, you can write little jot notes for the styles of questions they could ask you, like identifying state functions, predicting your entropy changes, all the different types of calorimetry questions, and make them very specific. And the reason I strongly recommend this strategy is because across various institutions and organizations, they tend to draw on the same sources for chemistry. So the style of questions, they might ask you for general chemistry on the MCAT, the DAT, various other, university classes. They tend to follow the same kind of theme. And so there's a limited amount of questions you might be asked on your DAT, where personally, when I wrote my DAT, I didn't get hit with any curveballs, and 95% of the people say it's usually content they've encountered before. So it's a matter of really getting familiar with the content and being able to do it on time and efficiently.
Okay, so strategy number 5, visit the testing center 1 or 2 days before your exam date, right? So I can't tell you how many times I've heard of someone coming to the exam date and realizing their ID was expired, or realizing that the traffic was much longer than they expected, or something as simple as not knowing where the washroom is on your break. It's really important to figure everything out about your test day on beforehand, right? So your tests, if you're in Canada and even in the US, happen in prometric centers. They're actually people who take other tests at the same time as you are, and it's very standardized. And so, you find, for example, for me, I can tell you, if I go to the next slide. So for me, my testing center and prometric center was in North York. What I did was, if my test was on a Wednesday, I went on a Monday, and I made sure of a couple of things. One was I brought my ID and made sure it's not expired. They don't accept you if your ID is expired. Also, one thing I did was I went to the building 2 days before, found out where the male washrooms are, found out what's the walking distance is. You want to really optimize every single aspect of your testing day beforehand. And lastly, find out travel time, right? So if my test is on 9 a.m. on a weekday, I should go on a Wednesday, I should go on a Monday and figure out how long it takes me to get to that location, right? You don't want any surprises on your test day. I'm not saying you should optimize your studying habits, but you should definitely optimize what you're going to do on the test day. It's very important, and any sort of unnecessary stress you experience on your test day is really on you and totally preventable. I highly recommend you doing that. Okay, so strategy number 6. This is for reading comprehension. Avoid weird methods, right? I was looking at prep courses, and you see all these weird names for reading. Search and destroy, vanilla, blitz, Vic Viper. I don't know what the 5th one is. Simple method. There's all these names, and you're just thinking to yourself, which one do I use? I have 2 months to study for my exam, and I have like 13 extra passages that I can use. By the time you figure out what's your favorite method, you're close to your exam date, you're filled with stress, and it's just not helping out. I can assure you, for example, I can give you an example of why each one of these methods is a problem. So search and destroy. What this method is this: you don't really read the reading comprehension passage, you just skim through it, okay? And what you do is you go and start looking at the questions. So the question says, at what year, for example, did X go to Paris? And then what you do is you go over the passage, you try to skim it again, and maybe you get lucky and see that it says in 1964, X went to Paris to develop this clothing brand. Here's a couple of problems with this. One problem, you have to do this whole skimming and reading of the passage for every single one of the 17 questions you have. It's not doable, right? The second problem is it's unlikely that you get questions this simple on your exam day, right? So I know that in some prep courses, the questions are this simple and people do really well in the reading comprehension. I can assure you on the exam day, there's more application-based questions. You require to actually understand the topic, right? So reading comprehension is the name of the game. You have to comprehend what you read and then answer it. So here's my strategy for you. Very simple. You read the passage, highlight minimally, and then go on and answer the questions, right? You have 20 minutes for each passage. Spend 10 minutes really understanding the passage, and the next 10 minutes you can answer all the questions and have extra time left, right? You're not supposed to look at the passage every time you have a question. Some of the questions you should answer right away and have the questions in mind, have the answers in mind. So that's one thing I would say for reading comp. And here's the last strategy, which is DAT is about performance, not studying, right? DAT is like any sort of standardized testing is like what I would consider like a sports event, right? Doesn't matter how much you trained, it matters how you do on the day of the tournament, which means, as I mentioned before, you have to optimize every single aspect of the test day, right? It doesn't matter how much you studied. I know many students studied a lot, but they didn't do well on the day of because they just did not feel great on their test day. There were too many uncertainties that they did not account for. For example, most important thing, when you take practice tests, emulate testing conditions, right? So if your test is at 9 a.m., on the day of your practice test, take your test at 9 a.m., take the required breaks, find out what food you have to eat, find out what helps you calm down, find out what helps you stress. If you rely on caffeine, for example, what are you going to do? Are you going to have coffee with yourself in your locker? Maybe not. Maybe you will, maybe not. You have to find ways to mitigate against that, right? For example, I can say personally, I love coffee. I knew that I couldn't take my coffee myself on a test day, so I experimented with caffeine pills. Now, I'm not suggesting you should experiment with those. What I'm saying is that you have to find out what works for you. Second thing, fix your sleep schedule from a month before, right? If you're used to waking up at 11 a.m., 12 p.m. regularly, don't expect to be alert when your exam time is at 8 a.m., right? Even if you start from a week before, it's not going to work. You need to make sure your circadian rhythm is well aligned with your test day. And lastly, don't eat too much on the test day. Don't eat too little on the test day. One of my best friends, he ate rice and beans on his test day for MCAT and then threw up the break after that. So make sure you figure out everything, optimize your test day. You don't have to optimize your studying day, but optimize your test day. Okay, so let's talk about DAT a little bit. We want to give ourselves a shameless plug. We want to talk about dattutor.ca. When I initially started DAT Tutor, I thought it was simply going to be us providing tutoring and maybe personalized planning for the students, but I soon realized that DAT is just a sort of like a section of all the things, all the hurdles that pre-dentals have to go through for them to get admitted to dental school. So we expanded our services. We now offer obviously planning, personalized planning. For example, if you need to take a day off, we include that, and etc. We offer tutoring, so either I will tutor, Kareem tutor, or other top 1% scorers will tutor for you. We will also do personal statement and interview prep. And recently we offered accountability tracking, which is that our tutors will look at your performance over whatever resource you're using, whether it's Crusher or Bootcamp. And then we either say, okay, here's your weakness. Maybe you should focus on this part, or encourage you if you're doing really well, and also say that maybe any sort of weaknesses you have, we can find for you and make lessons plans for you based on that. And lastly, there's Casper Prep. So we partner with Prep Beacon, which is an AI Casper course, and we offer discounts for them from 40% all the way to 100%. And I can tell you all this stuff that I mentioned are all included in our packages. So depending on the package you get, you could get all of the services combined together at a much cheaper price than the industry price. So we offer a 40% lowest discount guarantee, which is that of our major competitors, we offer 40% discount compared to them, whatever their price may be. Any questions you have, you can always book your free consultation on Instagram with us or on our website. And lastly, let's start with a giveaway, which is that we have a free chemistry crash course, and we also offer up to $120 of discount for our tutoring packages. So we have our discount codes right here. This is for our crash courses and also for our tutoring packages. There will also be a DAT resource provided and also the weaknesses sheet. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to put a link into the chat, right? And this is a Google Forms link. I want you to fill the form right now. Once you fill it, what you will get is after you submit it, you will get the coupon for the free crash course as well as our weaknesses data sheet. And we have 2 crash courses right now. So we have one tomorrow and we have one the day after tomorrow. This is our chemistry crash courses. It doesn't matter which one you take first, although it says part 1 and part 2, depending on what your if you think you can't make it to the Thursday one, you can make it to the Friday one. What I want to mention is I would highly recommend you guys book your crash courses for tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, because these crash courses only happen twice a month and we have limited spots for each, because in these crash courses, you're allowed to actually ask the instructor questions. So we can only have too many students for these crash courses. So the link is in the bio, fill out the form, and you can also visit dattutor.ca/crash course to book your crash course based on the link given. So right now, I'm just going to wait around, keep this link in the chat. And if anyone has any questions, they're more than welcome to ask me. So I'm going to wait a couple minutes though, for everyone to fill out the form.
Actually, if it's okay, during this time, I'm just going to share my screen and go over the resource guide that we made.
Sure. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
So guys, I made a resource guide for you guys. And I think you can see it now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is basically everything you need to know about the Canadian dental admissions test. So I took all of the information that was really relevant for you from there, such as like the scope of the examination, the different types of topics that is going to be tested on, like what reading comprehension is, which schools only accept the French DAT in case maybe like you speak French and you wanted to potentially apply to like all French dental schools, you have that option here as well. How to register, there's a complete guide here as well. So step by step, how everything goes. What a lot of people don't know is that when you register for the DAT, you basically send in an application to become a candidate, then they accept you to become a candidate. And then within 2 to 5 business days, when you're accepted, you get a follow-up email. And with that follow-up email, the CDA provides you your eligibility ID and like your dent pin. And with that type of information, that's what you're going to take to the Prometric website. And that's how you're going to sign up to take your DAT. So when you basically apply from basically that day, because I have not heard anybody that was like disregarded as an applicant to take the DAT, you have a 6-month window from the day that they give you your follow-up email. So that's kind of what your eligibility window is. You have a 6-month period to write your DAT. And if you don't write it within that 6-month period, then your fee that you paid for it, it's going to be forfeited. And also in case you were wondering what the fees include and everything, I've linked the DAT candidate guide for the Canadian DAT on here as well. And if you go to page 8, you can see all the fees for it. We have really good information here as well, like when to take the DAT. So if you are applying this cycle, as Arshia told me before, they recommend that you take it before October 1st, just because it takes about 4 weeks for your DAT score to actually process and be sent to those schools. The only school that I have a little bit of hesitancy with, so that maybe you guys might have to take it earlier, is if you're applying to UBC, because their deadline is approximately October 15th. So you may even have to take your DAT before October 1st in order for your scores to reach UBC in time. But every single school has different notices of when they want your DAT score by. So make sure you're kind of doing some research. I know some people only apply to schools in Ontario and Quebec, but especially for the other provinces, it's really important to note those dates for you. And in terms of taking the exam in the winter versus the summer, I know a lot of people are trying to take it this summer, and it's a really great time to do so, especially if you're not in school or anything. It really doesn't make that much of a difference unless it's something like you're taking summer courses and you're working. I really recommend you allow yourself as much time as possible to study for the DAT and not be distracted. So it's really worth it giving yourself that 6 to 8 weeks of time, like at a minimum, to prepare for this exam and not really have any other commitments tied onto you. But if you had any other questions about the DAT scores, how it's marked and everything, you can find that all here as well, and kind of like the differences between a few of the DAT studying resources. And yeah, so now we'll open up Q&A so that you guys can also ask your questions here, whether that's in the chat or if you wanted to raise your hand. And I wanted to give a big thank you to Arshia and as well as Kareem for hosting this webinar alongside of us and providing all the information that you did. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. So somebody is asking me if you can watch the YouTube live stream. You didn't get the link for the crash course. I'm gonna send the link to receive the crash course one more time. So please make sure you fill that out before you leave, just because that is how you're gonna be getting your free crash course. As well, this webinar will be recorded for everybody to watch on our YouTube channel, so you can go check that out afterwards as well.
I think we can also send them the link for the Google Forms on their email at the end of the meeting as well.
Yes, we can do that as well.
Yeah. But again, I highly recommend. So if anyone has any questions. So someone asked if we cannot attend the crash course the next 2 days, can we use it for the next one in 2 weeks? And you can. We initially had expiry date, but we decided to provide it to everyone. But you have to make sure you fill the form because we do check the names. If you have filled the form, you get the coupon will work for you. If not, it won't. If someone said, Chelsea said, will there be any more dates for the chemistry crash course, or is it only Thursday and Friday? So far, we decided to have the crash courses on Thursday and Friday. We are flexible with regarding the date and the time, but so far it's Thursday and Friday every 2 weeks. Yeah. You can also raise your hand if you would like and talk here.
I recently saw that you guys had the biology crash course on there, but I think it got taken down. It was supposed to be tonight, I think, or sometime this week. Is there a reason why you took it down, or did it just get postponed to like next week?
Yeah, so the bio crash course, we decided that we want to work more on it, and it's upcoming. So we're going to have it within the next couple of weeks when our biology
Okay.
crash course. We'll have more sections. We will also email you when we start our bio crash course. We're also going to do a reading comprehension crash course as well as a PAT crash course. So all of them are coming soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I just wanted to clarify.
Absolutely. If you fill the form, the moment we have your email, so we can email you the moment we have our new ones.
So somebody actually asked a really good question, which I think is important to know, of what time the crash courses are. All of the times for your crash courses, I believe, are going to be in Eastern Standard Time. So if you are viewing from a different province, that is important to note.
Someone said the link hasn't worked, so let me try the link. Sorry, the coupon. It should work. So if you
Kareem,
could.
someone is asking if there will be another chem crash course in 2 weeks if they can't attend this one. Is that right?
Yes, we're on board to schedule them every 2 weeks.
And is the chem crash course part 1 the same as part 2? I think they go hand in hand. So like a
They
person
lead up, like part 1 will cover, it's available on our website. Part 1 will be things like stoichiometry, gases, solutions. Part 2 is things like thermochemistry, redox reactions, nuclear reactions. The full comprehensive list is available on your website in case you're deciding which one of the two you want to pick.
So here's what we have. Also, someone said the link didn't work. We've had uses. People have used the link before. So make sure the spelling is correct for the link, for the coupon, I mean, because it has worked for other students. Oh, yeah. Okay, it worked. So,
Right.
so Fatma said, if we plan to take the DAT next summer, will the coupon still work? I highly doubt the coupon. So the coupons usually have expiry dates, but we will have more events next year as well. So if you're interested in using the coupon, I highly recommend coming to our future webinars. We'll definitely provide for next year.
Somebody
yeah.
Sorry, somebody asked, when do you recommend taking the DAT, like summer of third year? I can just answer that. So you're eligible to take the DAT after you finish your second year of university. but only one school in all of Canada will take a person that's applying within their third year with that DAT score. So you can take it after your second year if you wanted to apply to the University of Toronto. However, other dental schools which admit students after they completed their fourth year, so students usually take it in their summer after third year, and then they apply during the fall of when they are in their fourth year, so that hopefully they can get a result by the time they finish their fourth year. That's when typically a lot of students apply, but depending on your own plan and kind of goals, if you wanted to maybe take a gap year after you finish university, you would potentially want to take it maybe after the summer after you graduate. They're asking, can we use this code for bio crash courses? This is only for the chemistry crash course.
It is only for chemistry.
Can you share more about what the crash courses are going to be like, Ashia?
Absolutely. I think Karim should be better off to answer this question. So let's have
for chemistry crash courses offered tomorrow, the premise of it is like I introduce a topic and then we'll answer questions related to the topic, rather than it just be me sitting down and giving a lecture. I think especially with chemistry, one of the best ways to learn is to just do the practice. And so there's a mix of, for example, I'll introduce Hess's law. I might do an example with you guys, and then you guys will be given like a minute or two to do an example question. And then we'll move on to another topic and so on. So the goal is to, part one, we cover half the content, and part two, we cover the other half.
One thing I want to mention is that when you start studying for DAT, you realize there's tons of content, whether it's for chem and especially for bio, but for both of them. And you don't get questions from all of this content. You don't get questions, for example, there's a section about beakers and Erlenmeyer flask and stuff like that. There's laboratory section. You don't get that many questions, for example, from it on the day of the exam. There's certain, we would consider them high yield material, high yield concepts. I would consider to say that maybe 80% of the questions come from 20% of the material. And the goal of the crash course is to go over these 20% in the 3-hour period we have. Now, some people may wonder, do I take the crash course before I start studying or after or during? I recommend it for all of them. If you're after studying, it's a good review. It's always a good review to test yourself. Even if it's before, because the way we teach the crash courses is for someone who's never had experience with, for example, general chemistry before, it still primes you to better understand what your greatest strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Personally, I would actually do it before I start studying, but it really works for either one. Again, as I mentioned, for DAT, you don't want to spend too much of your time studying content. You want to study the content super fast and start practicing as fast as possible, because that's how you learn.
Someone is asking if you recommend taking, I know Kareem already answered it, but I'm kind of curious about this. Like, if you recommend taking it during a less popular time other than the summer, because I know the DAT is marked on a curve, do you guys have any information about how that curve would kind of be affected maybe during the summer or winter months? Because I feel like maybe less people would take it in winter.
As far as I know, it's kind of marked against your peers, so you get the same test or the same sets of questions, and how you do the percentile is going to be based on how the peers around you do as well. There's definitely more popular and less popular times to apply. So most of the students choose to take the DAT during July or August. Some do choose to take it like early September, just because it's usually less people taking it. But whether it'll make you do better or worse, there's unfortunately no kind of way to predict that. But it might just be harder if you take it during the school year. So the summer is usually a good time to be taking it.
I have a note to add on that. I don't know if it matters or not, but just to those who's also applying to the states, I know the states run on rolling admissions. So a lot of them require that you take your DAT during the summertime, like June, July. and have applications sent in July. So I'm not sure if that's something that's
Yeah, that's really important to note. So the American dental school applications are on a rolling basis and they actually just opened for submissions. So the earlier you submit, the more kind of better like your application will be assessed because they will view you as an early applicant. They technically like recommend you to take your DAT before June. So that way the couple weeks it takes for your score to process, even if it's an American score, because your score has to be validated by the American Dental Association as well. Through that, that's kind of how your entire package of your application will be verified. Kind of what I've heard, and I've checked a lot of different places, and I've actually spoken with a Columbia University admissions advisor, and they recommended that you take your DAT by the end of July and you actually try to submit your application on AdSAS as soon as possible. So if you can even submit your application without your DAT score in June, you would be kind of seen as like an early applicant, and they would see that you're planning to take your DAT in July. So then they will just wait until they receive those scores and see that. But you will still be known as like an early applicant if you submit your AdSAS application sooner than you take your DAT.
Also wanted to share, this is the Google Forms we have. So after you fill this Google form, you will get the link. And this is also, if you can see my screen, this is the Crash Courses website. This is dattutor.ca/crash courses. So we have the 2 of our chemistry crash courses. Again, I highly recommend, if you can, to book it right now for tomorrow or Friday. You pretty much press register, you go in, you pick the time we have, press next, and then you would get a booking page. And then after that, you can pretty much either log in. So here, this is Hamid here, but someone else, you can log in and then put the coupon, which would make it free for all. So that's all I wanted to say.
So somebody's asking, is the DAT score valid for 2 or 3 years? I think it's 2.
So it's 2 for 2 years. The Canadian DAT is valid for 2 years. Sarah said, sorry, I used the promo code for part 2, but it did not work. They said you've already used the promo code. So this promo code is only used for one part of chemistry. If you look at other competitors, when they offer crash courses, they offer crash courses in different parts. Actually, I would say on average, they do chemistry in 3 parts. We've been possible for us to do it in 2 parts, but because the parts are very, I would say, comprehensive, they're considered their own crash course in a sense. I think we're gonna do bio in 3 parts and PAT in 1 part, and then reading comp in also 1 part.
So after you fill out the Google form, you will use the code that you received to go on the DAT Tutor website and register for the crash course that you want. So if you want to attend the one for tomorrow, then you will go on the website just like how Ashia showed and sign up for the one that's happening tomorrow. Or you can save it for the next chemistry crash course for a preferred date that you want to go to. Does any school in Canada still require manual dexterity? No, they don't. I wanted to also have another question answered from earlier, which was any tips for preparing for PAT and RC, since many say that pressure is a little bit easier compared to the real DAT. What strategies did you do? Do you guys have any strategies that were outside of what you mentioned during 7 strategies? Because that's
right. So I can mention something, but before I say that, someone said that they didn't see a promo code section. You have to submit the form for you to see the promo code. Now, regarding the reading comp and PAT, you have to understand that your biggest enemy is time, right? If you had unlimited amount of time for each one of these sections that I mentioned, you would get 100%. So one strategy that I personally used that helped me a lot was to practice under less time that I was normally given. For example, for reading comprehension, if I was given an hour to do the 3 passages, first time I practiced it, obviously I used a full hour, but I slowly decreased the amount of time I was given. So for my next practice test, I would let a minute pass by and do the practice test in 59 minutes. And then I did it a couple of times. I got to a point where I did a full reading comprehension passage in 54 minutes. And you would imagine on the day of the exam, I would have extra time left. I had no extra time left, right? You would think 6 minutes wouldn't make that much of a difference. You would think 5 minutes wouldn't that much of a difference. It does make a difference. I would say if you're behind by 2 minutes, that might kill your entire momentum, make you super anxious, and not do well in the other areas. So I highly recommend practice under less time that you're given, either for PAT and reading comprehension.
So, Kareem, the crash course, the free code is not BFDCC. The BFDCC is for 20% off. So you can use that for your future crash courses. The actual crash course code, like the free one, since you guys are all here, it's okay. But you'll have to register in order for it to be matched. So you have to fill out the form with your name and then be able to have it validated with the coupon code. It's BFD crash course, and that will make the crash course free.
Yeah, put the link in the chat.
I'll put the link for the form just one more time.
What resources can you use if DAT Crusher was too easy compared to the actual exam or DAT Bootcamp? I've heard that DAT Bootcamp is really representative of the exam. I've only taken the American exam, and I can say the DAT Bootcamp is representative of it, but definitely go through lots of practice questions. Also for the Canadian DAT, I've heard lots of positive reviews from students who used DAT Crusher because they kind of review everything. But it's really, truly all about your practice, because a lot of students go through a lot of notes, but they don't actually practice the material. And it's all about understanding why each answer is correct, why each answer is incorrect, and kind of reviewing that, not just over and over again, but truly understanding it will really help you with studying. And what I like to do is just to like prep my mind every time I'm about to go study, is I do a couple practice questions for each section before I watch any content videos or even before I do anything. The nice thing about DAT Bootcamp is that they kind of have like a daily warm up. So you can kind of go through 10 questions, prime your mind, and then you can begin your studying. Think of the best ways to go through it. I always like to eat before I study too, because I can't study on an empty stomach. So definitely find the best tips that work for you. And I hope that this webinar was really informative for you guys. There's also another webinar that you guys can watch that we did with Ashia back in November, and that one is also on our YouTube channel as well. That one kind of has some similar information that was in this one, but definitely still worth a shot to watch that one.
So Elmira asked if I mind sharing a bit of my strategy for reading comprehension. I recommend so if you have 20 minutes per your passage, I recommend reading the passage within 8 to 10 minutes, really understanding it to a point where you can answer 60% of your questions without looking back at the passage, right? So a lot of people, if you look at, if you have been taking bootcamp or crusher, it usually says average person spends 1 to 1.5 minutes per each question they do for reading comp. That's too long. If you know the answer, you can answer it within 30 seconds. So read the passage really well, comprehend it, highlight only the key points, and then read the questions very, very carefully. They're unfortunately are out to get you. So even one word changing might actually affect the whole response. And you answer through elimination. It's very simple, right? Read the passage and then answer the questions. Don't try any other weird strategies. I also do want to share what our weaknesses sheet look like. So this is the weaknesses sheet we made for you today. Here you can put your test scores. So C1 is Crusher 1 test score. For example, for bio, you got 21, 22, 20, 26. It tells you the average, and it really correlates well with what you would get on the day of the exam. You would have to make a copy of it for you to be able to use it. This is the same thing for PAT. And then here is what I was mentioning. So you can choose why you got something wrong and the topics you got wrong. It's extremely helpful for you if you're studying, because I don't want you to study everything equally. I want you to study your weaknesses 3 times more than you would study the average concept. Also, again, feel free to book any consultation you would like on our website. So these consultations will regard our tutoring packages, and you can talk to me anytime. I'm more than happy to help with anything you need.
I will say, I think it's worth mentioning that doing DAT planning is one of the most important steps of beginning studying for the DAT. That's kind of making like a calendar that really suits you, because you may have work or other commitments that you are still trying to balance alongside it. So maybe just trying to follow like the boot camp study schedule or the crusher study schedule isn't going to work for you. So I do think it is worth it to kind of build that calendar for yourself, blocking off certain days that you aren't going to study because maybe you have another commitment, or blocking off the exact days that you want to do your testing and the days that you want to do your review. How I did it was I spent a chunk of my time at the very beginning doing content, and then kind of having the rest of that just practicing each day, and then also just doing reviews and testings every weekend. And leading up to my test, that couple weeks up to it, I do more testing throughout the week instead of just one per week. But it really does change person to person, and I think it's important for you guys to kind of learn about that. And Archie is a great person to talk to. So even if it is a consult that you guys are looking for, he can definitely answer all your questions, and it's really worth it to go over everything together. Did you go over the content first, then after you did practice questions? Yes.
I can show an example of what our plan looks like, and that also gives you a better idea of what the content looks like. So here's a plan that we did for one of our students. So this is what you get. Here's what I want to focus on. So let me turn this around. When you look at most planning sessions that you're given for the average prep course, for example, they tell you on June 14th, you should study like thermochemistry. And I found that being that specific with a plan is not very helpful. It's much better to have a routine and to have a general idea of what you want to do, and then have that flexibility to decide what I'm going to study on, for example, June 5th. So the way I structured is I put the first roughly 1/3, depending on how far you've gone on content. We have test days, and then we also have review days. And then the next 2/3 will be mostly practice days. And here we'll tell you exactly, for example, for this student, we said for a content day, study 90 questions for PAT, 1 strategy video for PAT, this amount of chemistry, and etc. So it really depends on you. We make the plan based on what your needs are.
Now, should you see the question in the chat?
Yeah, so it says, I hold a bachelor's degree in microbiology from Iran and a master's degree from Canada. Could you provide any insights regarding advice for the application process with your background? That's a very good question. I do know someone who has been throughout, I think they studied genetics in Iran, and they applied and they got interviews from Western and McGill. If you're very interested in, message me on DAT Tutor, and I will connect you with that person, because I want to provide you with the exact information. I can't tell you exactly I know, but I know who to connect you with. And also, again, on our Instagram, anytime you want, we have our Instagram here. Just follow us. And you can DM us. We'll get to you very fast.
Thank you, Elmira, for your kind words. We appreciate it. I'm going to stop the live stream, but